Hello everyone and welcome to this week's Science Hour. As you can tell, I'm from a slightly different location than normal. I'm coming to you from the cloudy and slightly rainy city of Chicago, where I'm working on doing some panel reviews. But with me in a much friendlier environment is Dr. Alan Stern. He is a researcher at Southwest Research Institute, works on a variety of different spacecraft, including New Horizons, which will be flying by Pluto in 2015, but that has nothing to do with what we're talking about tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about a new concept in how to fund space science, and this is the Uwingu project that is currently up for funding at the Indiegogo site. You wear so many hats, Alan. Can you give us a rundown on the things that are closest to your heart? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm hearing you twice. Once is time delayed, and not sure why. I can hear myself time delayed now too. How's that?
Okay, let's do the best we can with this. Can you introduce yourself a little bit to our audience, please, and tell us about some of the different missions you work on?
Sure. I'm a planetary scientist, and I work on a number of NASA missions. I lead New Horizons, which is on its way to Pluto, and I have two instruments that I'm principal investigator of right now. One is Rosetta, which is a European Space Agency mission to orbit a comet, the first comet orbiter. And that instrument's called ALICE. It's not an acronym, just a pretty name. We actually got it from a baby book. And the other is a ALICE derivative called LAMP, which is orbiting the Moon on the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. I also lead a big suborbital program here at Southwest where we'll be flying in space doing experiments. How cool is that?
That's awesome.
Chair a couple of committees and I do a few things on the side, like a wingu.
So one of the things that you have to deal with, just like I have to deal with, and you deal with it at a much bigger scale, is every time Congress gets the notion that NASA needs a little bit less money, we're asked to be a little bit more competitive in trying to keep ourselves paid from month to month, year to year. And it's getting harder and harder to find the dollars to fund our research, to fund our junior scientists, and to keep building new things into the future. You've been playing this game for a long time, and what do you see as the long-term trend in space science funding as it stands today?
Well, I think the long-term trend is the status quo that we've seen really for a couple of decades, that planetary scientists, astrophysicists, earth scientists who depend upon NASA, you know, they're victims of that old saying, if you only own one stock, you probably deserve what you get if it goes down. Right? No diversification in that portfolio. And sometimes it's NASA's fault, but oftentimes it's just the Congress or the wrong administration or the wrong year or the economy or any of the half a dozen other things, and programs get cut. And when they do, and I've run a soft money institute, I've been a soft money researcher, I ran the science mission directorate at NASA, and I know that it's just beyond people's control. And for that reason, I'm really thinking hard about how we can help people diversify their portfolio other ways.
And for people who aren't in academia, when we use the terms soft money and hard money, what we're talking about is how we're paid. And in the university environment and in the research environment, there are two basic kinds of positions. There are permanent hard money positions, or at least as permanent as anything gets. And these are often your university professors who are teaching classes, who are receiving 9 months a year worth of their salary to be a university professor. These are also administrators who run observatories and the staff who have often some sort of a line item that's either coming from the state or coming from some other private entity that makes sure that they have a paycheck coming basically far into the future. Soft money positions, however, the way we get funded is we'll put in a 3-year proposal and say, for 3 years, give me 20% of my salary to do this small project. For 5 years, give me 40% of my salary to do this other project. And occasionally, there's small and if you're lucky, large pots of money where you say, hey, look at me, I'm awesome, fund me to keep being awesome. But here in the United States, we don't have very many opportunities like that. So when you're a soft money person, it sometimes feels like you're bringing your salary in 1 month at a time, jumping from satellite to research project to research initiative here on the planet Earth. And it gets stressful and it gets hard. And I've gotten pretty good at diversification, but everything's drying up. And one of the problems that we're facing is how astronomy is done is in some ways changing. We see these giant, extremely expensive missions getting built, James WST, Mars Science Laboratory, Ground Base. We see ALMA, the Large Synoptic Survey Telescope. And these are giant projects that are going to have huge scientific return, but they also have huge budgets. And once upon a time, what we would have done is have a bunch of different people proposing a bunch of different mid-sized things, and now we have fewer people proposing larger things. And this is also impacting who and how all of us are getting funded. Now, this can get into a philosophical debate, or this can get into looking for a solution. Let's go into the looking for a solution. I know this is something that you've been focused on. So what are you hoping that you'll be able to do as we move into the future?
Well, we're creating something that's hopefully part of that solution called Uwingu, which is the Swahili word for the sky. And we want to connect people to the sky and use the proceeds from that, not just to be a backstop against funding cuts, not just to look at the cup being half empty, but also seeing how we can fill the cup up more. Because if Uwingu is successful, we'll create something akin to what medical researchers have, for example, in that they can go to the Howard Hughes Fund, or to the Gates Fund, or to any of dozens of other private sector funds in addition to the National Institutes of Health. You know, in the space sciences, we don't have very many places to go. So Uwingu is an attempt to give people more options. I told a reporter the other day, we have a big highway called NASA funding, and sometimes there are traffic jams and accidents on the highway, and sometimes you could just use an extra lane, and that's what we're hoping to provide. I don't think we're going to be as big as the NASA funding program, but we're certainly, I think, going to be able to supplement it, not just to provide the backstop, but in good times to actually be able to push the accelerator and get more done. And those are both good things.
And one of the things that comes out of this is the ability to bridge researchers who perhaps have a gap in their funding. And one of the things that we struggle with is in lean years, and this is a lean year here in 2013 fiscal year, what we find is the grant renewal that we're planning to get, suddenly NASA says, oh, we're not offering that grant this year. Astronomy Picture of the Day, which is a great project that many of us love to go and look at, was actually one of the things that got caught in the, oh no, NASA's not offering its ROSES grant this year. Crud, it needs to find a new funding source than the ROSES EPOS grant that it's relied on in the past. And Uwingu will be able to step forward. Now, currently we're being really vague on what Uwingu is going to do. We're saying it's going to fund stuff. But can you explain this vagueness that we're dancing around?
Sure. There's no great secret in this. What we want to do is just accept grant proposals. It's a whole other grant program. And individuals, companies, groups, missions, what have you, whether they're on the research side or the education side, we'll be able to send a proposal to Uwingu. We'll have it peer-reviewed, just like you would if it was a NASA proposal or a National Science Foundation proposal. And then the ones that get high marks are going to get funded up to our ability that, you know, the proceeds come from the sales. We'll have a certain budget every quarter. And one of the ambitions I have for Uwingu is that we want to make it easier on people to do more research and more outreach and education. I know from running a soft money institute and being a soft money person myself for many years that a lot of people feel like they spend more time writing proposals and then doing the business associated with it than they do actually getting to do their research. So I want to free people up with Uwingu. We actually want to fund, in many cases, people rather than projects. Right now, if you're a researcher, you might have to propose 5 or 6 different projects to get maybe 3 of them funded, and then those projects become what you do for a living. And And senior and seasoned researchers often feel like, gee, I've been doing great work for 20 years. It doesn't count for much. I've got to come up with new projects and compete every year to fill those funding gaps. What we'd like to do is give people another channel, to actually have people just send us their curricula vitae and what they've been doing. And if it's top-notch, then we want to give them a holiday from writing proposals. Give them a chance. You're funded for the summer. You're funded for the year. Very much like the Canadian system, in fact, so that they can do research or outreach all the time instead of writing proposals.
And what I love about this is under the current system, there's this pressure to always do something completely new and completely innovative. And if you're trying to see an idea through to completion, and you put in that renewal grant, often what you're going to hear is, oh, this isn't novel enough, come back with a new idea. And so that pressure to constantly come up with something new and only have 3-year-long ideas, you're going to be relieving that pressure. Now, the idea of where the money comes is currently kind of nebulous, and we're not going to reveal any of the products here, and I'll have you explain that in a minute. But what I'd ask is that the paradigm that the people listening have going into this is, well, I can go out and I can buy my red Starbucks coffee mug, and the proceeds from that go to cancer research. I can go out, and I have never done this because I hate the color pink, but I can buy all sorts of pink stuff, and the pink stuff goes to funding cancer research. I can go out and I can buy purple ribbons that support equality for people of all gender orientations. And so there's all these different products out there that usually involve a specific color, and Uwingu thankfully isn't getting into a specific color. They're getting into outer space. But the proceeds of the proceeds of the products are all going to go into funding research in the same way all that red stuff and that pink stuff is funding research today. So can you explain why you're being so vague in the product while running a Indiegogo campaign?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I should have been wearing my T-shirt. You're talking about colors. I have this great T-shirt that says, "Space is the new black." But actually, we're not trying to be vague. We want to build a little bit of suspense about what our products are, and you see that all the time. Apple isn't going to release a date on the iPhone 5 or what all the capabilities are. Or we heard that Dean Kamen was coming out with something for months before we knew it was the Segway. So we want to build a little bit of suspense, and so that when we launch, there'll be some excitement and some press around it. If we tell everybody now what it's going to be, then when it comes out, there's, okay, I already knew that. So we are holding back on what the apps are. But the model is very clear. When you buy something from Uwingu, you participate in an app, for example, then we're going to put, after our expenses, we're going to put those proceeds, plow them back into what we call the Uwingu Fund. And the Uwingu Fund is what we just talked about a little while ago, a grants fund that researchers and educators, space projects, missions can apply to and say, we have a need. Here's what we'd like to do with the money. We'd like X amount. And then if it does well in review and we have the funds for it, we're going to fund it. Pretty simple model. But here's the important part. Our apps and the things that we'll be merchandising on the website are specifically meant to get out of the space community into the much broader public, and not just here in the U.S., worldwide. In fact, we eventually hope that the website will be translated into Spanish and Japanese and many other languages. We want it to be worldwide because then we can create a very large Wingu fund. And by getting out of the traditional space community and into the broader populace, doing things that are really interesting for schools or interesting for hobbyists is going to give us a much broader wheelbase to generate a much bigger Uwingu fund. That's our objective.
And I think one way to describe this that doesn't give anything away is you're gamifying space in a way that allows everyone to get engaged, to do or have, depending on how you look at it, things that you really enjoy. And the byproduct of getting engaged in this gamification is researchers get money. And you're working really hard to keep your overheads low and to make sure that this isn't one of those $6 goes to pay for the coffee mug, $1 goes to cancer research. It's right. Not that paradigm.
We're exactly right. We're actually aiming to keep our expenses, including new product development so we can always have something fresh rolling out, all that paid for by half of our proceeds, so that the other half goes to the Uwingu Fund. That's our objective.
And I know that for some of the aspects of this, 50% is just the minimum amount that's going to go to research. There's going to be other aspects of it that lead to hopefully larger and larger portions being able to go to things that engage more people in learning and doing science over time. And that's one of the really awesome things about this project.
You know, nobody's tried anything like this before, so we're going to have to, you know, we're the first one to take this new airplane solo. We're going to have to see how it goes, but that's our objective. And we'll see if people like it. You know, if it goes viral a little bit, it'll be very successful. And, you know, this is really about doing a public good. Just by participating in Uwingu, people who come to the site and engage in an application are going to know that they're not just learning from it and participating and doing something social. You'll see what it's all about when we launch it. But you'll also know that you're funding the space exploration, space research. And we hope down the road to actually make your money steerable. That is, just like some campaigns that people give money to where they can actually click, I want my money to go to this charity or that charity. We think that down the road, people will be even more interested if we can say, do you want your money to go to astrophysics and the origin of the universe, or the exploration of the planets? Or do you want to go to studies of the earth, or to education and public outreach, or to pick actual projects that we're funding, so that people can actually participate in that way as well, more than just by using the app, by actually helping to steer the proceeds from their participation.
Now, I'd like to pause just for a moment for station identification. For those of you who are just joining us, this is the CosmoQuest Science Hour. I'm Dr. Pamela Gay, and I work at Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville. I alternate hosting the show with Emily Lakdawala of the Planetary Society, and with us this week is Dr. Alan Stern, who's talking to us about the Wingu project, which is currently seeking funding through Indiegogo, and its goal is to create a startup that uses the proceeds of internet-based products to fund new space research exploration and education about space. This is a great little project, and in the name of full disclosure, I am working with this project as one of its technologists. Now, one of the things that I have to say I particularly appreciated about this is it starts out up front recognizing that when you talk about space, you're talking about a variety of different activities. There are the exploration aspects, which in many ways are largely engineering aspects. How do we build spacesuits? How do we get into space? How the heck do we land a heavy 2,000-poundish rover on Mars? Then there's also the research aspects, the how do we learn the details, what questions do we need to ask to figure out how to successfully get at the origins of our solar system. And then there's the aspects of how do we take these ideas, communicate them to the public, and create a more scientifically and specifically more space and astronomy educated society. And you have built a team that is looking at all three of these different aspects. Can you explain how you evolved to weaving all three of these strands together?
Well, it really came through just thinking about it and bringing in people that wanted to participate, and a very organic, how do we create something good and what would people like? And it wasn't a formula you solve for the roots for. There wasn't a cookbook we could look in. We really just kind of making it up as we go.
And you have an impressive group of people associated with this project. You have, for instance, I know Emily Macomb Amon, whose name I never pronounce correctly, and I deeply apologize. Anyone who listens to Astronomy Cast knows I'm required to destroy one name per show.
And hers is Emily Kobabe Amon.
And I even got it backwards. Anyways, she's an excellent educator. She's worked with a number of different NASA missions to help get the results effectively out to the public and to school children and K through 12 teachers. She's part of your project. You have a whole network of journalists, scientists. Can you tell us more about the team of people that you've pulled together to make this?
Absolutely. And some of the more prominent people. We have just a great team altogether. the software people are phenomenal. The website people are phenomenal. You're phenomenal, having you on the team. Couldn't ask for better in terms of citizen science. And, many people know Andy Chaikin, for example, a space historian and writer. He helped do an HBO series on Apollo. He helped get Apollo 13 movie made. He's probably the foremost person of my generation in terms of communicating about Apollo and the value of human spaceflight. And another example is Mark Sykes, who runs the Planetary Science Institute, which is based in Tucson, but is actually a virtual institute as well, all over not just the United States, but all over the world with researchers. Mark's also the only planetary scientist I know who has a law degree,
Wow.
which he picked up along the side. He's in the Arizona Bar. But more importantly, he's been elected president of the Division of Planetary Sciences, as I have. He's been at the core of the planetary data system as a counselor for it, at the head of numerous committees. He's just a spectacularly well-rounded guy in so many aspects of science. And Jeff Marcy is another example. Jeff is an astrophysicist. He's the foremost planet hunter, I think, in the United States, at least the carbon-based planet hunters. We have spacecraft like Kepler that can outrun any carbon-based life form planet hunting. But Jeff is the gold standard for exoplanets, I think. He's out at Berkeley. We're spread all over. We have participants that are here in Colorado, down in Arizona, on the East Coast, in the middle of the country where you are, on the West Coast, and we hope to have overseas participants as well once we launch.
Now, the Indiegogo project that you're putting together is actually the culmination of several years of you and many other individuals working after work, working on weekends, working when you should be asleep, trying to put all these ideas together, sometimes beta testing these projects we're not going to talk about because we're building suspense, beta testing them with people who aren't necessarily researchers but represent more normal human beings who actually understand what mainstream society likes. You've been working on this for a number of years, and now you're seeking $75,000. This is the final push. Once that money is in hand, you should be 45 days away from launching things. Can you explain why this last-minute push, this last pocket of money is necessary, and why it will be sufficient to allow people to get this project off the ground and funding research into the future?
Sure, and you're right, Pamela. We started in 2010. We formed this LLC back then, and we've been doing software development, trying different things, and then testing it internally, which we call alpha test, and then with people on the street, the beta testing, scientists, educators, school kids, all kinds of different, just my neighbors, other people's neighbors, that kind of thing. As you say, although we put our own money into it, actual wrote checks to start the business, most of the valuation of the company is because we've done a lot of what people call sweat equity. The 3 a.m. thing isn't so hard because most of us are astronomers. We do our best work at 3 a.m. But, literally thousands of hours that correspond. We once totaled it up because we thought about going out for venture capital. More than $1 million in invested time over the 3 years by the whole group, all these people. And, of course, also direct expenses to start the company and do other things that you have to pay for, like your internet bills. But when we go public, when we launch the products, we're going to be in need of real cash to pay much bigger internet bills in the cloud, for example, big bandwidth bills. And we have to do a few things that are sort of mundane, like business insurance, and have a CPA, a real accounting, not hack accounting. We have to really pay income tax. And we looked at what's the minimum budget, not to pay ourselves, and actually not even to rent an office yet, but what does it take to really run it the first few months before we can build up enough cash flow to pay our own bills? Companies live and die by having money in the bank. That's like having blood in your veins for a company. And if you run out of blood, you die. And in the case of companies, the equivalent is you need some cash. And we calculated how much we needed to make sure that we could run the company the first few months, even if sales were very low, so we could build up our marketing base and start to really generate the money to run the company and to fund the Uwingu fund. and it came out $75,000. And we wanted to crowdsource that because if we went out for venture capital or even for angels, those are very well proven methods, but you trade the money from the investor for equity from the investor. And then the investor has some control because they have a big piece of the company. And we have such a strong mantra within the company, such a strong belief system about what we want to accomplish for science and education, that we didn't want to be in the position of maybe ceding control and having somebody else trying to steer. And since it's the 21st century and companies that are well known now like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, Fund a Geek, etc. are out there, we looked around and said, which is the best one for us? And it turned out to be Indiegogo, and put together a campaign which we launched a week ago, actually. Today's Wednesday. We launched a week ago, 8 days ago exactly, on Tuesday of last week. And we've been very happy with the response so far. We have almost 100 contributors to that. We're just about to get to 10% of our goal and looking to build up a head of steam. So we'd ask anybody who's watching this to go to the Indiegogo website. You can just Google it. Put in Uwingu as your search term. Read about what we're doing. Contribute if you can or if you want to. And whether you do or not, share it with your friends. Tell them it's cool if you think so. And help us get the word out because it's all about more and more eyeballs going to that website, some of them choosing to help us build up that kitty that will pay our bills so we can get launched.
And you have perks starting at the $10 level where people who promote at this level can be considered first wave explorers going out and funding that new first wave of researchers who are going to conquer the scientific understanding of our solar system. It's a neat play on science fiction. Beyond that, you have a Space Explorer perk where you get a Senior Explorer logo that you can post, and probably coming from my house, there's going to be an Uwingu button that you'll get in the mail, and it's a button star button, so it's produced by a women-owned company, which I love. Going through it, there's a citizen advisor level, there's a $100 founder, in which case you get to be part of our official countdown to launch, and you get a t-shirt. There's a council member level where you get to be part of our Citizens Council that gives you the option to help beta test all the software that's coming out of this and see all of our super secret projects a little bit before anyone else. And it keeps on going down where there actually is the option not to be the angel donor in the normal venture capital sense, but to be an angel who helps get space research moving into the future. So this is a different type of angel at the $1,000 level. And it's just awesome watching, as you said, there's about 100 people who've taken part so far. So this isn't a wildfire Indiegogo campaign, but it seems to slowly be picking up steam. And so we're hoping that the few dozen of you who are out there watching this and the hopefully few hundred of you who will watch this later we'll all take the time to tweet, to blog, to help get the word out that the ability that we have to call up Congress and demand that they better fund NASA is kind of negligible. I wish that that wasn't the case, but so many people have fought to get NASA's budget raised, and it's just not getting raised above the 0.5% mark. But this is an alternative method where you can say, I'm passionate about space, and I'm going to put my own decisions on where the money goes. And that's what I love about what you've done.
Well, it's like a lot of things. You know, if you have a hobby, if you're interested in basketball, then you go to basketball games and you spend money on going to the games and the basketball bling and following it, the magazines and all those things. But 98%, and that's a real statistic, 98% of Americans don't go to NBA games.
Yeah.
And similarly, if you're interested in music, maybe you go to rock concerts or the opera or jazz, what have you, and people make their choices where to spend their money. And so we're doing something analogous for a change with space, because in the government sector, and I know this very well from having been there, it's all about consensus. You have to get enough consensus to get at least half the votes so that you can pass on a majority basis. And that doesn't always produce the best result. And that's why, particularly in strained budgetary times, we can't get an increase for NASA. And if we do, it might not go to science. It might go to some other part. Not that those are bad, Those are all good. But this way, individuals can make direct choices. I like this stuff. I want to see it do better. So I'm going to participate in these apps, and I know that, it's going to actually put money in the Uwingu fund. And it's going to be open and transparent, and I can see where the money is going and what researchers and educators and other projects are getting funded. And I'm doing some good for something I care about. So it's actually very much like all those other things that we do, like give money to the American Cancer Society or the American Heart Association, or against battered children, or any other cause, even if they're not a cause and it's just something that you're interested in, like the opera in your local town, or helping the library. In the same way, this way people have a way to help space, but not by just writing a check, by making a purchase of something they're interested in. And that really broadens the base, as I was saying earlier. Then people who wouldn't contribute to space as a cause, but who might like the project, or like the app, or have fun playing it, or participating in it, can help contribute to space just by the act of making the purchase. So we think it's a new way that's going to be exciting for people, and we can't wait to roll it out.
One of the things that I really loved that I know that you helped inspire was there was recently the car wash for planetary science and the bake sale for planetary science. And that really got people going outside, getting engaged, and basically saying, we support science. And with Uwingu, you're going to be able to allow people to say, we support science and we support this science research. And what I love is there's the potential to actually eventually look at journal article papers and say, my money that I spent on something I had fun being, I can't say any more words, I had fun with, this research is something I helped initiate. And
yeah. And there's another aspect that's good. With the car wash, bake sale, shoe shine thing we did to attract attention to budget cuts, there was a large dose of groveling, where planetary scientists, in this case, because planetary scientists took the cut, were out there, shining people's shoes, literally, or washing their cars, not for money, but to make the point, we don't have anywhere to turn except NASA. Help us get that budget restored. This is a different mechanism, as you say, where people can solve the problem a completely different way with less groveling, just by clicking.
And there's no delusions that Uwingu is likely to be able to fund the multi-billion-dollar projects like James Webb and Mars Science Laboratory. But what's kind of amazing is there are lots of small missions out there, missions that are a few $1 million, that are doing amazing research, and ground-based telescopes aren't that expensive. And so Uwingu has the potential to participate in small-sized spacecraft to fund individual researchers and to do a lot of really meaningful things. Can you perhaps share some of the really awesome lower budget things that have come out of planetary science in recent years?
Or even in astrophysics and in earth science, $10,000 is a big thing to a graduate student. That's a big part of their support. $100,000 is a major part of a professor's research program. And so although those are large numbers for individuals, they're very small compared to space missions. And then even on the space missions, I was talking with Jeff Marcy, who's on our team one day, and he said, the Kepler team could do so much more if we just had more money. The science team hardly gets anything after we pay for the spacecraft and the communications and all the overheads in the project. And so a little bit of money by space mission standards could go a long way fractionally. We could maybe double the science support to some space missions. And I think that would be huge, because it's a huge multiplier, because in the end, the ones and the zeros that come down from the spacecraft don't make discoveries. They just go in a data bank, and until they're interpreted by scientists and then results are published, we really haven't got the value out of the mission. And usually in a space mission, only a few % of the money end up in the hands of scientists. So much of it goes to buy the rocket, to pay for the mission operations, to build the spacecraft and the instruments. So you might say to yourself, Uwingu can never fund a $500 million discovery mission or have any effect on it. But actually that's not true, because out of that $500 million, only millions actually go to the science teams. And there, if we're successful, we can make a big impact, an extra $1 million to this mission, an extra $1 million to that mission, or the funding of individual researchers and educators, and money to classrooms. Even hundreds of dollars can help a teacher who's teaching about the solar system, the origin of the universe, how the Earth is changing. Those things are huge, even in small amounts. So we want to think globally and act locally over and over and over again, year after year, create something really new and positive.
And what you said about small amounts of money going a long ways is amazingly true. I'm lucky enough to have some really awesome graduate students who work with me at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. And my graduate students cost me anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 a year. Now, with Astronomy Cast, we know that we're getting downloaded by about 60,000 people. Well, that means that I can afford 2 graduate students if each of those people donates just $1. Actually, sorry, I can afford 4 graduate students. I can't do math in my head while talking into a microphone, apparently. So I can afford 4 graduate students if each of our listeners just donates $1. That's 4 people who have their tuition paid and who have their ability to do research. People don't go into academics because they want to get rich. They go into academics because they want to help us in the fields we're in, planetary science, astronomy, and space science, because they want to help understand the universe. And we do the best we can to be frugal, to use the money that comes from the public in a respectful manner, and to stretch every dollar beyond what any $1 should be stretched for. And Uwingu is going to make it so that we don't have to pinch pennies, so that we're capable of doing more, such that we're capable of opening doors for more junior researchers. One of the things that I think gets lost a lot is when budget cuts happen, senior people like Alan and I are capable of scrambling and figuring out, and he's way more senior than I am and able to do this much more effectively, but I'm senior enough that I can make ends meet. But we're able to scrounge and figure out how to pay our salary. But unfortunately, the first thing to go is the early career researcher, the postdoc. The next thing to go is the graduate student. The last thing to go is the undergraduate, because they're the cheapest. But it's our early career people that we have to sacrifice. And we're basically killing our young every time there's a funding cut. And Uwingu is going to hopefully help us not have to kill our young.
And I hope that we break out of the zero-sum game, that for some mission or some grant program to get better, some other program or mission has to lose. So we want to actually expand the pie. We want to create a new funding source that isn't just for rainy days, but that's actually going to create more good, more getting done than has ever been possible before.
As we're getting ready to tie up, we're going to finish this evening in about 5 minutes. So far, you haven't really asked any more questions, but I'm grateful for those of you who pointed out I was having mic difficulties. Sorry about that. My MacBook Air is whirring like a mad machine trying to keep up with the Hangout. If you have any questions, get them in. Before asking for closing remarks and taking any last-minute questions that come in, I'd like to remind folks this is the CosmoQuest Weekly Science Hour. This show is hosted each week by either myself or Emily Lakdawala of the Planetary Society, or occasionally we get substitutes to come in and help us out when she and I are both traveling. And what we're trying to do is each week bring you some topic from astronomy, from either the political side, the exploration and research side, or the education side, so that you can understand in depth what's going on within the fields of astronomy and space science. You can keep up to date with everything we're up to by following CosmoQuestX on Twitter or on Google+, and you can sign up for our newsletter at cosmoquest.org, and while there you can also participate in doing science that's related to a number of different NASA missions. Currently our big project that's live is Moon Mappers, which engages you in doing science for the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. Now, I don't see any last-minute questions coming in, so Alan, I'm going to ask you to inspire our audience to go out, go to indiegogo.com, search on Uwingu, U-W-I-N-G-U. There will be a link in the description for the show, and inspire them to go spend their extra money helping make science possible.
Please
Why
do
should
that.
they do this?
Please help us change the game a little bit. Help us break out of the mold that we've been in, where the fickleness of the governmental budgeting process is what controls how much we can get done. Let's have a second way, not instead of, but in parallel to the great things NASA does. And I want to also say thanks, and I want to say thanks first to Pamela for actually, hosting this and making this the topic for the week. And secondly, I want to say thanks to all of you out there, because we've been finding in the week that the Indiegogo campaign is going, that we find somebody clicking on it for us and putting a little money into that startup about 10 to 15 times a day. But in the last 40 minutes, I've had half a dozen, and I'm seeing them come in live. So I think that's a strong correlation. That's signal rising above the noise, that those of you out there are actually going to the Indiegogo site even while we're speaking. And thank you for that, and thank you after we get offline for passing this on to your friends. It just means a lot. We really want to get this underway, and we'd like to see it launched early in the fall, and we think we can get there. We're just that close now. So
the question that I'm getting from user Silver Vaher, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. He's asking, so what are going to be the immediate next steps after the Indiegogo is hopefully successfully funded at the $75,000 level?
Right. Well, as soon as we, even before it's fully funded, we are going to put together our launch and marketing campaign to make it, to make the product that we're going to launch with well known as quickly as possible. We want it to go viral. We have some new beta testing that we want to do with very large numbers of people because it's cloud based, and we actually want to have a lot of people hammer on it at once, make sure it's pretty bug proof. It has been in small numbers, and then we're going to launch. And that may not take 6 weeks, particularly if the Indiegogo campaign is ramping up steeply and we can see that we'll reach our goal. Then we can start to put all those steps in place so that we can pull the trigger a little bit earlier than 6 weeks after Indiegogo. Maybe it'll be 3 weeks. We'll see.
And I know I've been asked the sadder question of what happens if we don't get all the money. And I've had to admit honestly, we're going to keep moving forward, but it may go a little bit slower because we're going to be limited by our own ability to, well, fish out our own money in some cases, and that's a difficult position to be in. So we hope that all of you will help us reach our goals so that we can launch this as quickly as possible. But I think you're with me when I say we're moving forward no matter what.
We're not turning back. We've got too much invested and we have too much hope for the future. We'll take what we get, but I'm pretty convinced that this is going to catch on even more than it has in the past week. We've got 6 weeks to go, and we're going to work on it every day, and then we're going to launch this company in our first app.
And so if you see me looking a little bit more computer weary than normal, it's because, well, Alan and I are using our spare time, and Lord only knows neither of us have very much spare time, so I hope you realize how important this has to be to us. We're using our spare time to keep trying to move this forward. We're not going to pay ourselves until we're paying scientists to do science. And it's a hard road, but we're doing the right thing to try and change the future. And so I'd invite all of you to try and change the future with us. And coming and listening tonight is the first step. I will be working to get this video out live on the Astrosphere Vids YouTube account tonight. We'll be adding this as a project update to the Indiegogo campaign. And so if you can help us get the word out, help us share this video, hopefully we can get more people engaged and we can get one step closer to helping more people effectively explore our universe. It's not just our solar system, it's all of space that we're hoping to step out and explore. So thank
Absolutely.
you very much, Alan.
I'm going to put my little campaign poster up here for everybody. There you go. Think Uwingu. As we like to say, do you Uwingu?
So thank you for joining us. This has been the CosmoQuest Science Hour. Come back again next week, same place, same time. Next week, I believe it'll be Emily hosting, and it'll be more science. Thank you very much, Alan.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.